All right. Call to order to the Facilities Committee of Fallbrook Regional Health District, Wednesday, March 12th at 5 p.m.
Director Salmon.
Here.
Director Leach is unavailable.
Okay. Do we have any public?
Nothing.
We're looking at him. Roy, you got any? He's like,
Have you filled out a card?
we like to be informal.
That's a no. All right. Okay. But feel free at any point.
Thank you.
All right. We're now to discussion items. Ongoing completed projects at the Community Health and Wellness Center. Boy, things are going really neat there, huh? Are we hooked up to electricity?
Yes, we are.
I don't want to spoil.
Well, it's the first, it's point A. So you call for point A and I'll give you the update.
Okay, point A, please.
Site logic update. So last Saturday, SDG&E came out and they energized the solar array into our account network, the grid, Skynet, whatever. So now the EV chargers and solar are all completely up and functioning.
Wow.
Did you move the cones today or are we still waiting for?
I think the cones might still be out there. We were gonna move them.
We were gonna move them.
And tomorrow, I'm hoping to have someone come by and
Test them, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Charge Point is the actual, company avenue through which the EV chargers are running. So, that activation went through, we set the current initial per kilowatt hour at 35 cents per kilowatt hour. We can adjust that as is important for the market, but that was just kind of your base entry. I am waiting for some final information from SiteLogic as to what the district's line item should be to help offset the cost. The idea that we didn't want to set it too high and we didn't want to set it so low that we begin to lose money on the charging.
Sure.
So once SiteLogic comes back to me with that number, then we'll probably adjust what that rate per kilowatt hour is. None of us have EVs, so we don't really know how to make it.
Yeah. How do people pay for that? And
You can pay through a credit card at the kiosk.
Yeah.
And if you have an EV, or you can Google EV charging near me, and our address pops up as a site.
I see.
Right, and that's where you need to kind of know what Charge Point is. And apparently EV drivers know some of these things. So we're gonna talk to a couple of our connections to have them test it to make sure everything functions in a way where we know the answers.
Yeah.
And then we'll put together a very brief cheat sheet so that as people start to ask us, we can A, have it on the website, and B, have it available for anyone who potentially calls, where we can say, oh, it's this kind of charging unit. While most EV drivers already know the information on those kinds of things, we felt we should probably know since we're the host site. But it is up, it's running, it's energized. If we get some sunshine, then we'll start generating.
Yeah.
But it apparently generates even with the overcast to some extent.
And if somebody were there for 2 hours, how much would they be paying?
It depends on if they're having to charge for the full 2 hours.
Well, let's assume that they charge for the full 2 hours.
Well, it's 35 cents per kilowatt hour. So it depends how many, it depends how many kilowatts they actually use. Right? If their car shuts off charging, they're charged in 30 minutes, then they're charged for the 30-minute kilowatt hour formula. And that's the part I need to get a little more clarity on how that math works from SiteLogic.
Like you, I don't have one, and so I don't have any idea what it costs to charge those things.
Right.
Have we compared local other areas, what they're charging?
Yeah, so I went and looked on, because it's all readily available online, what the FPUD and what the library, because those are our two most local. And they were around the 45 cent range. So that's where I was gonna go back and readjust ours once I got the number from SiteLogic, so that I know what our range could be. Right now, I just use the entry fee, which is what ChargePoint was recommending.
So on our solar panels, do we think we might make some money by selling electricity above our needs?
No.
No.
Because we don't have, so when SiteLogic first proposed the size of the solar array, they have to use historical electrical use data to identify how many solar panels you'll need in order for us to qualify for Inflation Reduction Act. Because the center wasn't in full operations and we didn't have all the new HVAC, we knew that that SDG&E rates would not truly reflect ongoing. So we made the decision to build the canopy larger so that we can add solar later. But the expectation is that we will reduce our electric costs, even if we don't generate to the full maximum to make or feed money back into the grid to get that credit.
Makes sense.
We'll probably never generate enough to outdo the full cost of the utility. That may change as we grow, and we've considered the idea of having a battery backup on site in the event that we do want to go full off grid for being a stand-up point for first responders, or if we're going to be off the grid as a cool zone. This will be phase 2 or 3 of that level of development, but we're not there yet.
Thank you. Is that it for point A?
That's pretty much it. So as you'll recall, we had to do a lot line boundary adjustment here at the admin in order to go forward with the next step here. So I have all those documents. We got it surveyed. I sent it to Dr. Skio. He was out of country. He was back in the country. We've now submitted it to Alex, our new legal. So Alex has spoken with David Jarvis, who is attorney for Dr. Skio, and they are in a conversation to try to figure out how we can get those lot line agreements signed.
Mhm.
From my initial conversation with Alex last week, there was no indication that Skio was going to deny signing it, but Jarvis had some questions. So Alex was going to be following up with him to
Do we
get
need to
some-
pay him anything?
We should not need to. But I believe that that's where the two legal counsels are having a conversation. I made sure to let Alex know the district's history of support for MedPlus and Dr. Skio.
But also, he's not giving up anything that he thought he had paid for, right?
Correct.
Right. So-
It's unusable space for him anyway. If anything, he'll have a benefit because his property size will shrink a little bit, which means in theory, his property tax could go down by like, $1. Probably. So we'll have to see what that actually looks like.
We done with A?
We're done with A.
B, building A, room 2 in Encinitas Design Group update, please.
So we are in a hold mode for their final design. One of the things that we discovered is their design and what SiteLogic had to do for the mechanical room for the electrical. There's a section where what the Encinitas Design Group needed to do to make sure those 2 bathrooms have a little bit more privacy. We now realize that there's an overlap in that space. So we were going to allow SiteLogic to just finish their project, get it signed off. Then, once Encinitas Design Group comes in, if those electrical panels have to be moved or whatever, it becomes part of that project and doesn't change or cause any problems with the permitting for SiteLogic. So we wanted one to complete before we move things with the next phase. So we actually have a meeting that we need to get scheduled with Todd from Encinitas Design Group to take the conceptuals to start putting them into actual construction level.
Okay, good. Steve is building B, education rooms 3 to 6. Conversion and exterior restrooms, Arch 5 design.
So I'm gonna put C and D together.
Okay,
In proposing both of these construction projects, which are about $50,000 to $60,000 projects each, I had gone to Jeff's template for bid documents,
Scott.
Jeff Scott, our previous lawyer, for those bid documents. We have heard previously that our bid process for Public Works was extremely onerous for the size of the projects, and we were having difficulty attracting general contractors. So, knowing that the last GC who had indicated he was going to bid, he emailed us this week and said, it's too much, my subs, we can't, we're out. So we did the bid opening today, but there was no one here. So those bids both failed because nobody submitted. However, seeing that this was coming, I had reached out to Alex, yes, was that yesterday? I think it was yesterday. And explained, could he perhaps look at our bid documents? This is the feedback we've gotten. And he informed me about a public works group called UPQA, the Uniform Procurement Construction Cost Analysis Act, something. UPQA.
Sounds good to me.
And basically, it is a group that we could opt into. So this information will come to finance to look at because it requires an adjustment of spending cap that I could authorize independently, which is why it'll go to finance before it comes back to the board. But the crux of the matter is there are 3 tiers in bidding for public works.
Oh,
The first tier is any project $75,000 or under can be done in a completely informal manner. Which means we could go to our identified, approved general contractors and say, we have this project, blah, 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 and we would not have to go through the bid process at all.
wow.
The second tier is from $75,000 to $200,000, which requires an informal bid, and there's certain documents that go with that. And then $220,000 actually and above requires the full formal bid process, which is what we've been using. A project that size is going to attract a different kind of contractor where these problems we've been running into will not.
Yeah.
So Alex's firm is sending us the template documents for all of these kinds of agreements. And those will come forward. Because I got it yesterday, we couldn't really put it on the agenda for today, but because I had expected that the bids for C and D as listed would fail, I'm bringing it up. Both of these projects would fall under that $75,000 cap, more than likely. So once Alex can bring this information, it'll go through finance. I'll take it to the April board meeting. We'll have a resolution ready that the board could adopt. If they do, we send that to this UPQA thing, entity, and then we're allowed to use these processes.
Isn't that great to find that out? Wish we had found it out earlier, but nice to know now.
Good to know now.
Yeah.
Right, so that was a long bit of background story, but because it's relevant
Yeah.
to facilities, especially as we have projects at the Wellness Center that are going to often be that under $75,000 cap. It allows us to not be quite so bogged down.
Well, great. The next item, and let me tell you this, I have never seen on any agenda the term defunct. And congratulations.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
right, so we've got a defunct.
Defunct HVAC removal on building A and B.
Yeah.
And then the addition of new HVAC unit for building B. Let's go back to history again. When we put the new HVAC and the new roofs, or when we put the new roof on building B, the education building at the property, we had those rooftop mounted HVAC units, 2 sets of them removed because they weren't working. The final set, which is where Rock Rose was still leasing from us, that unit was still kind of working, so we left it. We are now at the point in the project where those units for rooms 3 and 6, the very end of that building, those units are not keeping up. They haven't died 100%, but they're at 99.5% dead. So it takes a crane to pull those off. All right. That said, in order for us to replace the HVAC unit on there, we're going to use the same rooftop mount for the new HVAC because there's not enough room on that sidewalk to be able to place the units. Putting them back up on the roof makes good sense. Our HVAC general contractor has already given me a bid for that. It's well within my spending cap. That's fine, right? And previous facilities have already said, yes, you have to have HVAC. So I presume current facilities would concur.
Okay.
Okay. Then to add on to that, building A, we just added HVAC to replace in that building in June, July last year, August, something like that. Anyways, we replaced the HVAC in building A already. But as you're driving up to the building, the old giant 5-ton units are still adhered to the outside of the building. They're an eyesore. They're defunct. To have them removed requires a crane. So we're gonna do 2 birds, 1 stone. The HVAC guy can have the crane come out. They'll remove those 2 defunct units from building A while taking the dead one off of building B. He'll put the new one on building B. And then building A, all we'll have to do is a patch to the exterior walls for building A. We already plan to renovate those wall spaces anyway. So for a little while, it won't be as pretty, but it will look better because it won't have those big, giant, heavy units.
So when these units, the ones that were defunct,
Yes.
what were they to have been heating and cooling?
The main chapel area for the church.
And
So-
in the summer, was it just beastly hot because it wasn't working?
Yes, we weren't doing programming in there because you could open the windows in the morning and the first hour it was a little cool. But after that, I mean, they brought in all kinds of fans and that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So we took the previous choir loft that was up there. It's not accessible to the public because the stairs aren't appropriate and there's no elevator opportunity.
Right.
So we put the HVAC units up there. They blow into the room, and then the actual condensing units are on the roof between the 2 buildings in that breezeway. So when you go back and you look at the Encinitas Design Group sketches, they have a facade that covers with our own sign the vision of those. So it's dominoes, right? We had anticipated the whole time that we would do something of that manner.
Yeah.
That's where Todd with Encinitas Design Group incorporated it in for us.
Smart guys, huh?
Well, we're trying to be very consistent and methodical in the phasing of the projects. So we're at the point now where getting rid of those units just makes sense since we have to finish the HVAC in building B and we'd have to pay to have the crane out. Might as well do it all at the same time.
Yeah.
So.
When does this happen?
So I spoke with John, who's our HVAC guy. He was booked for this month, so we're probably looking around the 1st to middle of April before he can get all of that out.
That'd be fun to watch.
Once we know when it's happening, I'll let you know. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll have to know because we'll have to cordon off some space, so that he has access. Getting the rooftop unit off of building B in the back will be difficult because you can't get close to the building. So they'll get as close as they can from the lower, field area. But those crane operators are used to having to do that reach over,
Yeah.
or so he's indicated to me.
Roy and I were talking about our love of trains. Now we can do cranes as well.
There
Yes.
any chance the crane might damage the parking lot?
No, because it'll come through the main area and they're used to driving over those. And then to do the actual heavy lifting from the building B, it'll be in the dirt lot, the lower lot, on the concrete. So there didn't seem to be any concern for it.
They're insured.
Well, that's great, but we still also don't want to.
Well, board member comments and future agenda items. I don't have a comment. Do you have any future agenda items? I mean, we know that there'll always be updates.
There's always updates. Not really. We've got, everything seems to be working pretty good. We're not having any challenges at the center. Nothing odd is happening here. Just as a side note, obviously there's no landscaping in front of the building here. We purposely didn't put anything back because after the building was painted, we knew that we would be redoing. The other part of that is when SiteLogic starts the project here, we have to reconfigure the front entryway to this building in order to be ADA compliant. That will require us to move the butterfly old hospice sculpture. So that will require a crane type bulldozer thing because those boulders are super heavy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take those boulders and those stones, we're going to relocate them and incorporate them into the landscaping in front of this building. Mission Resource Conservation District, our tenant, obviously, is already working on a design plan and a plants list so that this landscaping can be more pollinator friendly, but also still attractive. And we'll utilize those current boulders in that design work. So that is coming. A lot of it is predicated on when SiteLogic can actually start doing the dirt work here.
Yeah.
And we don't know when that is until we get the boundary adjustment documents completed.
Speaking of pollinators, I think we've all known about the monarchs and the milkweed, but I read something a couple days ago that lots of species of butterflies are in jeopardy,
Yes.
and that's a shame.
Which is why we're working with Mission Resource Conservation District to have a pollinator garden out of the wellness center. So at the front, when you're pulling in that kind of, gated area that's not really usable anyway, they're planting more plants there. We have a small amount here. We've talked to this little triangular plot that's between us and the driveway for Fallbrook Healing Crestwood. They're going to utilize that space as potentially teaching space for pollination. So we're gonna do our part to help keep our bees and butterflies and stuff and things.
Yep, we need to do that. Good. Well, unless there's anything else,
Did I forget anything else on buildings or?
we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
If I went upstairs, would I find a magic marker I get so that I can,
Would you find one? No,
You need
but
to
can we
highlight?
bring you one? Yes.
Yeah.
well,
Actually, there's one on reception desk.
okay, you mean just right up there?
Yeah, I'll grab it.
Okay, well,